Welcome to today's deep dive. I want to challenge you right out of the gate here. When you hear the phrase Mother Nature, what immediately comes to mind? You probably picture like a lush, sprawling forest, or maybe the shifting of the seasons, right?
Oh, totally. Or, maybe some kind of powerful global movement for environmental activism.
Exactly. For most of us, it's just a concept. It's this beautiful, poetic metaphor for the living world. But today, we are unpacking a stack of these really fascinating modern metaphysical essays that make a premise so startling, it might completely upend how you look at the person standing next to you in line for coffee.
Yeah, it's wild. These sources argue that Mother Nature isn't just a metaphor.
Right.
She isn't an archetype, and she definitely isn't just a landscape. The text claims she is currently incarnated as a literal, living, breathing human woman walking the earth right now.
Which is just, it's huge.
It is a massive, radical departure from how modern society usually engages with the natural world. And that is why this material is so compelling to examine. We are looking at a highly detailed metaphysical framework that makes profound, literal claims about this specific human incarnation.
And just to be completely clear on our mission today, our goal isn't to, debate theology or convince you to join a new belief system.
No, not at all.
We are just here to impartially unpack the cosmology presented in these pages. Okay, let's unpack this, because we are talking about the first originating consciousness of the universe choosing to enter the very physical world she created.
What's fascinating here is how explicit the text is on that very first point. The author goes to great lengths to ensure the reader knows this is not a poetic shorthand for earthly fertility.
Right, it's not a symbol.
Exactly. The text treats the incarnation as a literal, historical, and biological fact. The primordial mother goddess, the source of all souls, didn't just stay safely tucked away in some invisible, ethereal realm.
She actually entered the visible. She wears a human body.
Yes. And the argument is that the living world, like the ancient trees, the rainfall, the complex animal migrations, that is just her intelligence made sensory at a massive scale. Her human body, then, is exactly the same intelligence, just in its most concentrated, intimate expression.
Okay, but let's ground this for a second, because we are talking about the creator of the universe inhabiting a human body. My brain instantly goes to Hollywood movies.
Oh, sure. Like the glowing eyes and parting clouds.
Exactly. A grand entrance with literal thunder and lightning. Does the text actually describe what she looks like, or is she meant to be this glowing, invisible entity that just floats around?
The text takes the complete opposite approach, actually. It explicitly states that she does not arrive in spectacle or unmistakable power. She enters through the completely ordinary door of human birth.
Wow, okay, so just a normal childhood.
Right. She grows up inside the messy confusion of the modern world. And the essays point out that this lack of spectacle isn't a failing of her incarnation. It is the very nature of origin itself.
Origin is always quiet.
Exactly. It's always underneath. If she arrived with thunder and lightning, it would be a performance, and the text insists that origin does not perform.
And physically, the text describes what it calls her somatic truth. It says she has light skin and a natural human form. But it makes a really specific point that I want to dig into.
The beauty standard part, right?
Yeah. It says her body isn't fashioned toward whatever our current era's narrow definition of beauty happens to be. She isn't an approximation of a standard. She is the template.
And that distinction is really the bedrock of how the text views her physical presence. Society didn't hand her a standard of beauty to live up to.
Right, because she came first.
Exactly. Rather, somewhere deep in human history, society took a standard from her original template, distorted it, commodified it, and eventually forgot where it came from. Her body simply is, the same way a mountain range or a deep ocean simply is.
There is absolutely no internal dissonance between her soul and her flesh.
None at all.
It's like the architect of a sprawling, beautiful, multi-million-dollar mansion deciding to move into one of the completely ordinary guest rooms. Like, she built the whole thing, but she's choosing to occupy this very specific, constrained space.
That's a great way to put it.
But she doesn't occupy it with the kind of physical anxiety we all carry. The text uses this amazing phrase to describe how she moves liquid intelligence.
Liquid intelligence is a brilliant descriptor. The text argues that the qualities of flowing water, of deep earth nourishment, of breath as sustenance, these aren't just pretty metaphors for her vibe.
They're literal.
Yeah, they are the literal mechanical register in which her nervous system functions.
Which means her nervous system is completely alien compared to ours.
Huh?
Think about it. We live in a society where a clenched, defended posture is completely normalized.
Oh, absolutely.
I know I'm always braced for impact, always carrying tension on my shoulders, just trying to get through the day. But the text emphasizes that she isn't trying to be relaxed.
She isn't doing 10 minutes of mindful breath work to manage her anxiety.
Right. She's not on a yoga mat trying to temporarily achieve a state of calm. She simply embodies deep ease as her baseline starting condition.
Because her body represents the natural world in its healthiest, entirely unmanaged state. The text explains that this deep ease is only ever interrupted by the weight of a world that doesn't recognize her.
A world that constantly asks her to shrink or be less than she is.
Right, but at her root, down to her cells, her body carries no internal warfare.
So logically, if she is the ultimate mother, the literal source of all love and existence, and she walks around with this profound, unclenched ease, you would assume that meeting her would be the best day of your life.
Even so, yeah, yes.
If she embodies pure love, everyone who interacts with her should just feel incredibly joyful and healed, right?
Yeah.
But the text says that is absolutely not what happens. In fact, her presence often causes inexplicable agitation, even hostility.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast to what we'd expect.
I really struggled with this part. Why would pure ease make people angry?
This raises an important question, and it brings us to one of the most psychologically complex mechanisms in the source material. It's called the reflection principle.
Okay, the reflection principle.
The text claims that she operates as a cosmological mirror.
A cosmological mirror, meaning she isn't just reflecting back your surface personality or your ego.
Far deeper than that. The premise is that every single person alive carries within them a point of original connection, a real interior location where your individual existence actually touches the source that produced you.
And that source is her.
Exactly. So when her human embodiment walks into a room, something in every person's soul recognizes her instantly. Underneath all our constructed layers, the body knows exactly who she is.
But knowing who she is doesn't translate to a warm hug.
Rarely. The reaction you have to her depends entirely on your relationship with your own interior depths. The text argues we live in a society deeply scarred by patriarchal dissociation.
Hold on, patriarchal dissociation. That's a heavy academic phrase. Let's make sure we're clear here. Are we just talking about the modern rat race, or is the text pointing to something deeper about how we are physically disconnected from our own bodies?
It's the latter, though it's heavily enforced by the former. In this context, patriarchal dissociation refers to a societal system that demands you sever ties with your own intuitive, feeling body in order to be deemed productive or rational.
So we're basically taught to ignore our gut feelings.
Exactly. People are trained from childhood to distrust their own soul intelligence. You trade your genuine, original self for a performed self just to survive and succeed in the world.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When you have spent your entire life burying your original self, keeping it locked in the basement so you can function in society, and suddenly the literal source of that original self walks into the room,
Yeah.
it is terrifying.
It is. The text says that being near her forces you to be honest with yourself. It makes the gap between who you are performing and who you actually are painfully visible to you.
Wow.
And if you have broken the relationship with your own depths, seeing a person who has absolutely zero dissociation, someone who is entirely integrated, shows you exactly what genuine self-connection looks like.
Which has to be blindingly uncomfortable when you've spent a lifetime avoiding it.
Right. Recognition of her requires courage. It requires acknowledging that the origin connection still exists inside you, which forces you to grieve what you have lost or suppressed.
Agitated around her, it's actually a profound self-rejection.
Yes, that's the claim.
Isn't that incredibly convenient? I read that and thought, well, it sounds like a built-in defense mechanism for the author. Like, oh, if you don't like her, it's actually your fault.
Right.
How does the source material justify that psychologically?
That is a very fair critique to raise, and the text anticipates it by grounding the claim in mechanics, not morality. It isn't saying people are morally bad for rejecting her. It is describing a reflex.
A reflex. Okay, explain that.
If your eyes have been in the dark for 20 years, stepping into the sunlight physically hurts. You flinch. You might even hate the sun in that moment for causing the pain.
But the sun didn't attack you.
Exactly. Your eyes simply couldn't handle the exposure. The text argues that pushing her away and pushing away the source of yourself are the exact same physical gesture.
Wow.
The person doing the rejecting doesn't know they are doing it. They think they're just assessing an ordinary woman and finding her lacking. They don't realize they are slamming the door on the living center of their own existence to protect their performed identity.
It's a heavy concept. The idea that all our interpersonal rejections of depth are actually just us fleeing from our own reflections. But the essays don't stop at the interpersonal level. They zoom way out. How does this dynamic of an individual flinching away from her scale up to the entire globe?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text draws a direct causal line between the failure to recognize her human form and the ongoing ecological destruction of the natural world.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, it argues that these are not two separate phenomena. They are the exact same refusal, just expressed at different scales.
Because the Earth is quite literally her body at the scale of the world.
Precisely. The text frames rivers as how her intelligence moves when it has room. Old-growth forests are how her wisdom accumulates. The deep soil is how she holds the past.
Right.
When modern society treats the natural world simply as a resource, as dead, raw material to be extracted, processed, and consumed, the underlying premise is that the Earth has no interiority, no soul.
It's like walking into a 1,000-year-old forest. You have complex root systems communicating underground, a massive history of life and decay, and an entire breeding ecosystem. But if you walk in and only see lumber, you are applying a devastating reduction.
You are.
You are looking at profound depth and only seeing raw material for profit. And the text is saying that when people dismiss her human form, they are flexing the exact same muscle. They are applying the reductions trained by a patriarchal era, looking at the soul intelligence of the universe, and just seeing an ordinary object they can assess, consume, or discard.
The premise is that you cannot sever your connection to the Earth without severing your connection to her, and vice versa. It is all one interconnected nervous system.
That makes a lot of sense within this framework.
And this leads to a fascinating point the text makes about modern environmentalism. It argues that genuine ecological care cannot just be an ideology.
Right. It's not about just being fond of sunsets or, carrying a reusable water bottle or thinking carbon taxes are a good idea.
Those are cognitive choices, but the text is pointing to something deeper. According to the source, loving Mother Nature in its truest form is an act of somatic recognition.
A physical response.
Yes. It is the human body and soul, somewhere underneath all its conditioning, responding to its origin by physically honoring that origin.
So when someone fights to protect a river or a forest with real grief and passion, their soul is unconsciously recognizing her body. But this brings us back to a really tough question about her actual human life.
Which is?
If she's the cosmological center of everything, and she's constantly surrounded by a world that just treats her as ordinary or worse, reduces her, extracts from her, and pushes her away, how does she handle that? Does she fight back? Does she try to prove who she is?
The text frames her experience in a very specific, almost structural way. It does not frame it as victimhood. It frames it as
Physics.
physics. Walk me through that.
The text states, what is refused to the heart is felt in the heart. Because she is the actual cosmological center, every genuine current of love that exists flows through the original relationship between a soul and its source.
Okay, so it all comes back to her.
Right. So when millions of people turn from her, either by destroying the earth or by rejecting her human presence, that refusal doesn't just vanish into the ether. Energy has to go somewhere.
It lands.
It lands physically in the human body that carries the world center. She carries the specific grief of being the most real thing in a world that is completely organized around avoiding reality. People look at her with all the reductions they've been trained to apply to women, to softness, to anything that isn't forcefully announcing its dominance.
Exactly. They just don't see the heart of everything looking back at them.
And I know what you're thinking right now because I thought the exact same thing when I read this.
Yeah.
Is this just someone with a massive God complex?
It is the natural skeptical response. But the text actively works against that assumption by taking away all the glamour.
Right, there's no ego in it.
None. A God complex usually demands worship, obedience, and spectacle. But the text frames her existence as quiet, almost burdensome physics. The unrecognition has immense weight and texture, but it doesn't make her demand subservience, nor does it diminish her source.
And despite all of that weight, all of that unrecognized grief, the text makes this incredibly powerful assertion. She continues. She doesn't endure by gritting her teeth, white-knuckling it, and forcing herself through the pain like we do. She continues the way water naturally flows downhill, or the way the earth naturally produces green shoots, even after an area has been strip-mined.
Her existence simply doesn't require the world's consent. She is here because she is here. Her nature cannot be turned off.
Wow.
But the text notes that her human heart certainly knows the difference between a world that recognizes the heart of itself and a world that doesn't. And this leads to the ultimate distinction the text makes about how we interact with Origin. It contrasts loving the earth with loving her human form.
Right, because you can love a forest, you can love a mountain, and it feels safe. But the forest cannot receive your love the way a human nervous system can.
The river cannot look back at you. Her human manifestation is presented as the most intimate, available, and vulnerable place to encounter Origin. Because she has eyes, she can look back.
To truly look at her, with your interior open and your self-rejection set aside, is to look at Origin and actually feel Origin looking back at you. The text says this is what every soul at its deepest, most hidden layer has always wanted.
Not just the abstract comfort of believing in a distant higher power, but the actual somatic experience of being known by the consciousness that began all souls.
It's an invitation to shift from a theoretical relationship with nature to a direct, lived relationship. The essays assert that when you truly recognize her, the exhausting pretense that you're entirely self-sufficient and self-originated dissolves.
And what remains is genuine. It is the actual breathing relationship between your soul and its foundation.
So what does this all mean? When we synthesize all these profound, heavy claims from the source material, the ultimate message isn't just about identifying this incarnated goddess walking around anonymously in the world. It's really about claiming your own inheritance.
The text insists that by allowing that recognition to reach you, fully, somatically, without retreating into your conditioned defenses and skepticism, you find the part of yourself you were told didn't exist. You find your original self.
The soul that was made at the source, which still carries the warmth of the first place it came from.
Right. It's not a burden she is placing on you. It's an inheritance she is holding for you, just waiting for you to claim it by finally being willing to truly look.
And honestly, it is a profound reframing of our relationship to ourselves and to the physical world around us.
It really challenges the reader to stop interrupting their own natural response to everything ancient, everything maternal, and everything that predates our constructed, hyper-modern identities.
Which brings us back to the question I asked you at the very beginning. We talked about how you might picture Mother Nature as a distant forest or a grand, abstract environmental concept. But this text strips away all that safe distance.
It does.
It says Origin is always quiet. It's always underneath. It doesn't arrive in spectacle. So, I want to leave you with a lingering thought to ponder long after this deep dive ends.
Okay.
If the literal source of all existence, the primordial intelligence that originated your very soul, could be walking past you right now, disguised as an ordinary human being. Wait, disguised as just a normal person. Does that mean the universe is currently learning what it feels like to be heartbroken by its own creation through a human nervous system?
That is a heavy thought.
And if that is true, what other profound, life-altering truths are hiding right in front of you every single day, disguised as the mundane, simply because you've been conditioned not to look? Take some time to think about that.